Hello, my name is Matthew, and it's Christmas Eve as I'm recording this, so I wanted to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. And it's also getting to the end of the year, and at the moment I'm reading The Adolescent by Dostoevsky. It's my copy, and I know I'll be reading this into next year, so it's the last book that I'll be reading this year. And I thought, of course, this is always a good time to reflect on what I've read this year. It's been a very good reading year for me. I've read a lot. I've read quite substantially more than I've talked about in video. So I also thought this would be a good opportunity to um, have some self-reflection about just what I've gotten through this year, and then also to be have an opportunity to share some of my thoughts as a year in review. So, like I said, I've been reading The Adolescent, and um, I'm really good. I'm really hoping to make a video about this one. It would be the last of the four books that I've made videos about for Dostoevsky. The big books, the Idiot Demons, um, the Karamazov brothers, and Crime and Punishment. And maybe next year I'll read Notes from a Dead House. Um, but this is the time of year that I always tend towards Dostoevsky. I love him. So I'll talk about this more at a later date. Um, I also wanted to show some books before we get started that I haven't either I haven't finished or I haven't picked up at all. And the first one is a new book. I picked this new to me. I just picked this up while I was Christmas shopping for my nieces. I went to the bookstore and picked up children's books, and then picked up something special for me. And this is the translation of the Histories by Herodotus uh, by Tom Holland, the same namesake as Spider-Man, but not translated by the actor. Um, I read the introduction, which was fantastic, and I already love Herodotus, just endlessly fascinating. So at some point, I'm gonna reread this in this new translation. Really looking forward to that. Um, and a book that I was excited about, I pre-ordered, um, and I'm actually surprised that I haven't uh, completed it. And so years ago, Emily Wilson translated the Odyssey, and it was in all the all the periodicals, all the literary journals. It was a big deal. I remember, um, and I read it, and I really liked it. I don't know if it's my favorite translation of the Odyssey, but I really liked it. And um, several years later, she translates the Iliad, and I pre-ordered it. It came in. It's beautiful hardback cover, um, and I read the first two or three books, two or three chapters, books. Um, but I was already reading something else. I can't remember, and it was kind of cold outside, and I think those two factors made me put it down. For some reason, I always feel like it's appropriate to read the Iliad when it's hot and sunny and fiery out. Um, so I'm expecting next summer, if not sooner, I'll get to the Iliad. And the last book that I'll show that I started but didn't finish, and I think I already talked about this in a earlier video, but it's The House of Government by Yuri Slezkine. Real big thing, and I loved what I've read so far. It's really fascinating. It's this um, literary, historical uh, book. It's very strange. Let me see if I can find. It has pictures all throughout, so it feels fictional. Um, also has a feeling of being a documentary. It's a really, really interesting book. The history of Germany at the beginning of the 20th century. Um, but it's so big and heavy and not pleasant to read in bed. And so I think just the form factor made me pick something else up at some point. Um, and then, let's see. One of the authors that I've read um, the most consistently um, throughout this year has been Horace, the Roman poet Horace. And I've been reading the David Ferry translation. The book that I go back to most often is the Epistles, but I've been reading the satires and odes and epodes quite often, nearly every day, not quite every day. Um, Also, David Ferry, the translator here, passed away this year. I saw a news item about that, so um, I'm grateful that he put the time in translating Horace, and also, at least I know, Virgil as well. Um, and these epistles just uh, speak to me in a very immediate way. Um, they are these poems in the form of letters that he's writing to his friends, and they read as if these are letters that he wrote to me 2,000 years ago. These letters, I can still read them in translation and get a sense of this guy who lives in the countryside and lives in the city, and when he's in the city, he longs for being in the country, and when he's in the country, he'll talk about the opulences and um, culture that you can find in the city. It's just wonderful. He'll write these letters inviting you to a party and saying, "I'll have good wine. If you want a wine that's even better, you can bring it yourself." And just wonderful, wonderfully rereadable. Let's see. The other thing that I've read most often this year has been the Bible, and I just picked up my Oxford World Classics. It's the King James Bible. I've also been reading some newer translations. It's Robert Altler and David Bentley Hart, I believe. Robert Altler, I believe, did the Old Testament, and David Bentley Hart did the New Testament. They are wonderful books, full of scholarship and critical apparatus and lengthy footnotes. Really great. But I also do spend a lot of time with this big book. Just last weekend, I read the Gospel according to St. Luke, but I've been having so much fun reading the stories in the Old Testament, going through Samuel 1 and 2, and Chronicles, and Judges, and sometimes being in the mood for the Proverbs or Psalms. Just endless. It's a library. When I do read the Gospels, I do often read this little slim one. This is where I read Luke just recently, but it's nice that it's easier to hold in the hand. This has also been a good year for me with Shakespeare, and I have a rocky relationship with Shakespeare. Some people that admire him and love him can always pick up Shakespeare. He's always right there to enlighten and entertain. And for me, I have to be in a mood. And I had a really good reading run this year, going through several plays. I read the Tempest and Othello, Julius Caesar. It's this magnificent um, speech in the middle of Julius Caesar. Um, I can't remember who gave it. It was somebody, but it was really good. It's just, what do I have here? Oh yeah, and Hamlet. So these books. And then I'll show some that I've been happy with, but not the best books that I've read this year. Um, in the autumn, I typically think about Capote, Thanksgiving Visitor, and Christmas Memory. I read The Silver Jug, which was a nice companion to those other short stories. But I read Other Rooms, Other Voices, and it's his first novel. It's his debut novel, um, and I found it uneven tonally. Um, the the descriptions of the setting and the wonderment that and the kind of strange macabre atmosphere that is evoked is lyrical and beautiful. The characters come off cartoonish. Everything is exaggerated. Um, while I was reading this, I was actually thinking about A Confederacy of Dunces, which I feel um, tonally was done um, much more um, focused. Everything made sense. Everything was extravagant, but it connected in a way that I feel like this did not hit the mark. It's not his best book. Actually, I love, Rudin by Turgenev. I was reading um, sketches from a Hunter's album, and it was a period between reading whatever primary book. I had finished something and thought, I'll spend some time with short stories, and I read a short story by Turgenev, and another one, and then I thought, well, he's also a novelist. I'll read some of his novels. This is his first. This is his first novel. So other voices, other rooms. Capote's first, and then Rudin. And this is just a fantastic book. As I've been getting older, and having that time to enjoy authors and books, and then have time go by and pick them back up again, my esteem for Turgenev is just growing and growing. It's so consistent, and um, wonderful storytelling. Actually, I'll show this too. So I read Ulysses this year. Reread it. It's beautiful, really cleverly designed cover, and I'm actually glad that I read it. I feel like my opinion of this book um, feels safe and settled. I'm not someone that finds Ulysses to be the pinnacle of literature. I I'm glad that I read it. Um, Time's gone by. I got some more of the in jokes and puns and things like that, but it doesn't do it for me. I don't find it. Um, I don't find it to be an enjoyable reading experience. So others can, love it as much as they want. So now I'll show some books that I thought were good, but not my favorites. With The Flow, I think I talked about this one. It's a really great companion to Against Nature. It's by George Carl Hausman, or Husman, however you say his name. And instead of having this incredibly rich libertine who can have all of the experiences and all the most rarefied things, that's kind of the contents of the premise and Against Nature. This book it's really poor guys. government clerk, um, just looking for a good meal, basically. And everywhere he goes, things get worse and worse. Uh, I find it very funny. It's also extremely dark. Um, good. Okay, so Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. Um, and it's tragic. I also just find myself laughing at parts. Just this idea of uh, incredibly bleak situation, and the idea of, well, how do we make it worse? What would how could these characters suffer more? I really had a good time with Death of a Salesman. It's afternoon's read. The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I loved reading this, and I read this um, in high school, and I hated it. I think this is one of those quintessential books. When I think about my childhood reading, mandatory requirements in English class, and suffering through these old dusty books. This is the book that I would always think about. Um, and I can actually see why now, reading it and having it be so good, and thinking that there's a logic to, well, we'll share this great reading experience with young readers. Um, but I think a year or two ago I read The House of the Seven Gables, which I thought was terrific, and this was really great as well. Um, Evocative. The first chapter really had me worried, but it's great. It's great. Um, a new translation of Steppenwolf by Kurt Beals. Um, I had a lot of fun with this book. This is a wild, wild ride. um, this was fun. Okay, so um, this is it's by Catalina de Arusso. It's called Lieutenant None. And it was written, I think it was written in 1599, but it's an older book. And it's a Basque book, so the Basque country in Spain. And it's about a woman that dresses up as a man and then goes off and has adventures and gets into sword fights and scraps. Really entertaining. One of the things that I found so curious is that after she dresses up as a man, not until the very end of the book is it addressed at all. So she'll be thrown into jails, and no one realizes that she's a woman. It doesn't come into play throughout the bulk of the book. It's just she dresses up as a man. Now everyone thinks she's a man, and then you just move on from that. That's the premise, and then you just move on. But she'll get into these scraps, and then quickly, it's almost like she like moonwalks off the scene, and it is just thrown into another adventure. So it has that kind of rolling, serialized feeling to it, like it feels episodic. Okay, so I just talked about Confederacy of Dunces. I don't really understand why it would win the Pulitzer, but I was impressed with this book. I thought I read it years ago, and I thought it was going to be the same feeling I would have like the last time I read a Kurt Vonnegut book, where I thought, oh well, I really liked it when I was a teenager, but now not so much. Where Hunter S. Thompson seemed so cool when I was a teenager, and a lot of that just wears away. Whereas this book, I thought it was gonna be juvenile, and it wasn't. It was really well constructed. The way that the storytelling kind of interconnected with all these characters and spiraled out, really impressive. Grapes of Wrath. I think I made a video talking about this, um, but it was great. It was great. Um, Actually, some Roman history. I couldn't find. I have a copy of what is it called? It's by Polybius, and it's the like the early history of the Roman Empire or something like that. I wish I could hold it up, but I couldn't find it easily. One of the best books I read this year because it was eye-opening. I've the past couple years I've been reading Livy and Tacitus, trying to um, learn about Roman history, reading the old Roman historians, and um, with Polybius, his way of storytelling, um, it became cinematic. I really felt like I was understanding what was happening, and it works both ways. Livy was helping me um, uh, get the groundwork for Polybius, and then Polybius opened my eyes, and then I could go back and read Livy um, with more under my belt, so to speak. Um, this is another great one. This is The Expedition of Cyrus by Xenophon, and it's this wild adventure story, and there's an absolutely hilarious moment to me because um, against all odds, there's a band of soldiers. They're stuck behind enemy lines, all these things. And who is there to come in and save the day, to be the hero? It's Xenophon. The author of the book is the hero of the book, which just cracks me up. And I think um, the rest of these books now are what was the best, what I loved. Um, so the Marquis de Ganges by the Marquis de Sade, and maybe it wasn't the best book that I read this year, but um, when I found that this was available, I had never heard of it. It was new to me, and I I have a soft spot for the Marquis de Sade, and um, when I think back about these stories, Justine, or this one now, they are so over the top, and reading it is horrifying. But thinking back on them, I find myself chuckling at the absurdity of this world where everybody is conspiring to make you suffer. Uh, just random strangers, anywhere that you go, you just meet more and more villainous, psychotic sociopaths that want to have elaborate schemes to torture you. I was really looking forward to this, and it did not disappoint. So this is The Letters of Flaubert, edited and translated by Francis Steegmuller. I've read um, Letters of Flaubert in other forms, different um, combinations or concepts, and Flaubert is one of my favorite writers, um, and he's so versatile. So, Madame Bovary, Salambo, Sentimental Education, Boulevard and Picochet, The Temptation of Saint Anthony, I think. They're all so different, and Flaubert is famously economical with his word choice, and so uh, two things become very valuable to me. One is reading his voice, Flaubert's own personality coming off of the page, and also the lack of um, preciousness uh, in the writing itself. Um, it's fascinating, and this collection, it's going through his literary life. When he's a young man, he's talking about the books that he's reading and what's influencing him. He's reading all of his life. Eventually, he starts writing in his 30s. First book that he writes, Madame Bovary, is writing um, to his friends and family about his writing process, and I just find it fascinating. Let's see. Okay, so here now we're just at flat out what were some of the best books of the year, and I'm so happy that I went back and reread Middlemarch. Um, just a world of a book. The, I think I made a video talking about Middlemarch, but um, it's so smart. Um, it feels his characters feel real and three dimensional, and um, it's amazing. I did spend some time reading Scenes of a Clerical Life. There are these interconnected stories, and I love stories like these. Small, pastoral, inconsequential um, lives of uh, people that live out in the country. I just love that um, subgenre. Um, and the last two, I'll say that this is probably um, this was the most enjoyable book of the year for me, and it's Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. Um, Endlessly entertaining and funny and captivating. And the structure of the book is so impressive because you get the feeling that these kind of books at this time period, that it's serialized, and as long as people keep reading it, then more stories are going to come about. But as you're reading it and thinking back about um, the events that have happened and things that have been set up, uh, it it reads as if it was constructed to be exactly this length, with a fully realized plan of what's going to happen to all these characters. I don't really know the history of um, the, the book as far as how it was written, but there's a lot that I loved everything about this book, and I still need to read something else by Henry Fielding. Um, and then if you're someone that watches my channel, you might see this coming, but the best reading experience of the year was the new translation of the Brothers Karamazov, translated by Michael Katz, Dostoevsky, of course. And um, I love this book. It's already one of my favorite books. Uh, but I had pre-ordered a copy, and I thought to myself, I have a little channel, and I know there's booktubers that reach out to publishing houses, and maybe I could get an advanced copy. Wouldn't that be something? And I reached out to Steve, and Steve said, "Well, I have an extra copy. I'll send it to you." And he sent me this advanced reader copy, and I it went from, I knew it was going to come out in 6 months' time, and I was going to be waiting 6 months. And an idea popped in my head, and Steve was generous enough to send me one of his copies. And then a week goes by, and I have it in my hands. Um, and I've talked about this book at length, so I'm not going to really get into it. And I actually still kept, when the copy that I had ordered came in, I didn't cancel it. I kept it. There's just something very sentimental and special about these books, and the generosity of Steve. Um, and I've read a lot more than this, but it's a pretty good amount of books. Um, let me know what you think about any of these, if you've read them, or what your opinions are on them. And it's the end of the year. Again, Merry Christmas, and I hope everybody has a Happy New Year. And I also want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone that spends time with me watching these videos. Um, and so that's what I'll say. Merry Christmas. Please leave a comment if you would like. Thank you for watching, and take care.